Go Leafs, go.
I'm not giving you another sexy song now.
I was going to say, that was another sexy version there, man.
Guys, I'm sorry. That's just my voice.
That's just when you're having scotch. That's what that is.
I may have had a bottle.
I may have had a bottle or two.
When your son screams all day about the stupidest shit, you have a bottle of scotch at the end.
Sir, how many drinks do you have a day? One. One drink, one shelf. All right, welcome back to Leafs Fans and Hostile Lands podcast. We've got a lot to talk about this week. There's a lot going on in the NHL and with the Leafs. So we're going to go back to a piece of news that we just missed a little bit on the last podcast. Marc Bergevin of the Montreal Canadiens out as the general manager, and Jeff Gordon, formerly of the New York Rangers, is in as the vice president of hockey operations and the interim general manager until they find a new one.
All quotation marks.
Yes.
Because we all know who's really in charge, even if they put a French speaker as the GM.
And Jeff Gordon kind of spoke a little bit on that in his press conference that he had, I guess that was on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. He was saying that he's not necessarily looking for a GM that's going to be, with a lot of experience, doesn't necessarily even have to have general manager experience in the NHL. He's looking for someone who's going to be able to complement him. And I think in this role, he's going to be looking for someone who is likely Francophone, but at least is going to be probably a Montrealer, someone who's going to be able to speak French. So what do you guys think about Jeff Gordon coming in as the new vice president and interim GM of the Montreal Canadiens?
Well, based on what he did in New York, I think this is the best choice they could have picked. Because he turned that team around so quickly, and he said, we are going to do a rebuild. And I think it was right after they went to the conference final. And their rebuild has been stellar. Now, I think it was last year was a little more to be desired from that performance, but he built an awesome team, and he built it, I'd say, kind of similar to the Leafs, really going for the star power, but he found diamonds in the rough a little bit. He got Zibanejad for like nothing. That was an insane trade, and
re-signed him.
And then re-signed him for a shit ton of money, which was awesome.
Deserving.
Adam Fox, like just out of nowhere. I think he was part of that trade with Calgary. Obviously, the Panarin signing. Panarin kind of wanted to go there or Florida, but he made it happen. Kreider, he signed Kreider, and there was kind of a lot of iffiness there. It's like, oh, is Kreider going to go to free agency? Is Kreider going to be traded? Nope. He signed him, which I think was the least likely option, but he's really rebuilt his career. Like, he's one of the hottest players on New York right now. And then Lundqvist. Not that he moved on from Lundqvist in a negative way, but he had stuff in the tank left. Georgiev, Shesterkin, they've come up. They've been really, really good. And he left with Lundqvist on good terms. It wasn't really, really bad. So I think Jeff Gordon was an excellent, excellent signing by the Habs. Not excited to see what he's going to do long term.
As a Leafs fan.
3 years from
As
now,
a Leafs
you're
fan. I did see something. I only read the headline that if they're going to do a rebuild, he's going to say it. Very similar to what he did in New York.
So, Dan, do you have anything to add?
I think Kyle said most of it. I mean, Montreal had to make a move in some kind of way. Now, they don't yet have a GM, right?
No, so
he's just VP.
So he has recently made a statement saying that he is searching for a GM. It's not going to happen until at least after Christmas.
Yeah, okay.
So he's going to be taking at least the month to interview people, and he's looking for someone who isn't necessarily experienced and who is going to be able to complement him in the role. Now,
and I think that's kind of... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a few names that have been thrown around at this point. So I know Danny Briere is one name that's been thrown around a lot as a potential. He is currently running the Maine Mariners of the ECHL, a team that I believe he founded. Patrick Waugh has been thrown out. Cool. He has put his own name in the ring on that one, saying, I want to be the GM of the team. And another one is Matthew Darche, the current AGM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, what do you think, Dan? Do you think that they should go with someone young that is an up-and-coming French GM, or do you want to see someone that is a well-established GM that's going to be available? Someone like maybe Jim Benning.
When he said Jim, I thought he was going in a different direction than Benning.
I actually thought you were going to say Patrick Waugh, and then you say Benning, and I'm like, what the... Yeah, I think they should immediately hire Jim Benning from Vancouver. That is the most sense. Take one toxic body and replace it with another.
At least we know he'll do exactly what Jeff Gorton wants.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, you mentioned like he's kind of looking for less of experience and more of a in sync with him kind of play. That's kind of the way that Shanahan Dubas has kind of worked. Like they're in sync with each other, even though they may not always agree on things, and that kind of came out in the All or Nothing. So I think it makes sense to go with probably someone that, regardless of their experience, maybe go with someone like Waugh if he works with them well. But I don't know. Does he have history with any of these prospective GMs?
I don't believe so. He originally came out of the Boston system where he kind of worked his way up.
Yeah.
And then he was the assistant general manager in New York and then became the full-time general manager until he was fired last year after the whole Panarin, Tom Wilson incident. And it seemed like the owner of the team, James Dolan, just lost his mind, decided to fire everybody. And everybody knew that Jeff Gorton was going to be available pretty soon, or going to be hired pretty soon, because he did too good of a job in New York to be sitting on the sidelines this long.
One article I did read about Gorton is that he brings humor to the locker room. Not necessarily the locker room, but you know what I mean, to the organization. And maybe that's what Montreal needs right now. A little bit of, let's try and see the upside of our season that has kind of taken a turn from our spectacular run in the playoffs. So it's a great move, I think. I'm excited to see which GM he picks. Hopefully, as Kyle, I think you nailed it. Like in a few years, Montreal is going to be dangerous, just as I think Ottawa is probably going to be dangerous in a few years. So we'll see what happens there.
So as the GM of the New York Rangers, Jeff Gorton spearheaded a few different buyouts for some veteran players. So there was Henrik Lundqvist, Dan Girardi, I believe was another one. I know there's at least one more. It's not off the top of my head at the moment. But do you think that Gorton is going to be, he's not going to be afraid to buy out some of these players on Montreal, let's say, or even trade or move on from some of these big names?
Talking about Price.
I'm talking about Price as moving on.
Oof.
We're looking at, is Josh Anderson worth his contract? What are they going to do with, I guess you can just sit and wait for Shea Weber to retire. But do you think he's going to be afraid to move on from some of these guys, or is he going to give them a good shot for a little bit of time and try to keep this core together?
I want Price to be the one that is bought out, traded, something. Just because that's the biggest thing. That is so huge in the hockey world. A $10 million goalie being traded.
You like chaos, Kyle. That's kind of your thing.
I love it. Just to go back, you said Girardi, Shattenkirk also bought out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tony DeAngelo, he moved on from. And
I think any GM that was worth his salt would do that, though.
Yeah, obviously not Carolina, though.
Yeah.
Brad Richards is still on the buyout history, but with $0 cap recapture sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But that might have been before his time.
It's something funny.
Yeah. Sorry, but yes, I want him to do something big if the plan is a rebuild. The only problem is I don't think he has anybody to replace Price if that's the big one.
That's a good point.
Caden Primo, maybe. I don't even know who's after that.
Isn't Jake Allen the number one since they protected him in the expansion
Jake
draft?
Allen's number one.
That was...
How'd that go? How's that working so far?
Ouch, Craig.
If Allen was taken in the draft and then Price decided to take time off, they would have nobody. So I'm kind of behind Bergevin doing that. It was a sleek yet slimy move for him to do. But I get it. And not many teams are going to take a $10 million contract right off the bat. They should have, I think, but not many are. But yeah, I want that chaos. I want him to either move on from Price. I think Anderson has a place in this rebuild. He's a little bit younger. He's got a leadership role probably already. I think you're also right. Weber, just ride him out. Let Nashville take the cap recapture.
I want him to retire just for that.
Just for that.
$24 million off the cap for Nashville. That will screw them. And again, chaos.
They already have so many picks. Like, they're not Arizona Coyotes amount of picks
next year.
But they have so many. And if he says, now's the time, Sheldon Keefe-like, I think he can get so many more for a lot of different players. Obviously, Ben Sherrod is already kind of on the trade block, and supposedly the ask is a first. And the way he's playing right now, that's a little high. But
I think they're expecting him to, again, be a playoff player, kind of like we were talking about Nick Ritchie being. You don't pay for Sherrod for the regular season. You pay for him to ragdoll Austin Matthews by the collar in the playoffs.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Just ruined my night.
So, Dan, anything else to add on the Montreal Canadiens?
I'm going to take the opposite side of Kyle, and I'm going to say I don't want to see him move right away. I want to see him wait out the season. I mean, where are they in the standings right now? They're second from last in the division. They've got 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
They've got less than half of the points of the Leafs. So, they're not going to be making great moves. I don't expect a giant playoff push to start in December all the way through spring. So, I would say ride it out for now. Price is a huge contract, as Kyle was talking about. I also don't think you want the optics of coming in and immediately axing the biggest player. The biggest player who's also super respected on the team.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the right way you want to start your your VP ship.
Now, another thing that Gorton did say in his last press conference is that he's going to spend a little bit of time, speak to all the different people in the front office. He wants to talk to all the players, get to know the players, kind of see where they see this team going as well, kind of get an idea of the direction that he can work with and which players maybe it's time to move on from, which players he think that are going to be part of this team. So I don't think he's going to move away immediately, but I think the biggest thing is that he doesn't seem to be afraid to move on from some big names in order to push forward a rebuild. Unfortunately, that is something you have to do when you want to rebuild a team. You can't go halfway in, and that's where you start getting stuck in that middle around the 15 mark where you're not going to get a great draft pick, but you're not going to be making the playoffs. If he wants to go all the way in, because that's kind of what Montreal has done over Marc Bergevin's tenure. They've always gone halfway in. They've never fully committed to a rebuild. They've just been really terrible by accident a couple times and got some high draft picks and then lost those players or traded them away or
brought them up too soon.
Yeah. All right, so another big move in the NHL with a general manager moving. Jim Benning, as we mentioned earlier, has been relieved of his duties in Vancouver as well, along with coach Travis Green. And they have hired a coach, so because they need somebody to be up behind that bench right now, and we all know that the Aquilinis are the GM anyways. So
Can't you do virtual coach now? Isn't that
just iPad coach?
Yeah, exactly.
That Modern Family episode.
Yeah.
Where he's just going around an iPad.
Yeah, that's kind of what I picture.
So noted Leafs fan Bruce Boudreau is the new coach in Vancouver. What do you think of that move? Now, he is one of the most winningest coaches in NHL history at this point. He's led a few different teams to division titles, and I believe he brought the Washington Capitals to the President's Trophy at least once.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he is a very good coach. He doesn't have a lot of experience success in the playoffs. What do you guys think about the signing of Bruce Boudreau in Vancouver? Dan?
I kind of think it makes sense. I mean, he's got such a hockey history that if you're going to bring in somebody to help a struggling team, I kind of see it as the Leafs bringing in Babcock. Bringing in somebody with years of experience, decades of experience, to try and pull a team that's kind of spiraled for the last 2 years out of their spiral. I don't know much about his coaching style, to be fair. He's never really coached a team that I've been invested in or really cared about. But, he's got a bit of a history, so I think it's not a bad move.
Now, it has been a while since you've coached. One thing that is his style is he's very offensive first. Mm-hmm. He's kind of the anti-Barry Trotz. So that's one thing that, he had a lot of firepower up front when he was coaching in Washington. I believe he was coaching Minnesota for a while, which was kind of the opposite. They were very defensively built, and he didn't have very much success with that team.
Yep.
Now, Vancouver does have a lot of guys very offensively minded. They've got a lot of star players at the top, and they don't have a lot of players on their defense that are very defensive. They're going to be able to push that play up pretty hard. Now, I think that's going to be I think this team is going to work well with Boudreau. Kyle, what do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, you're totally
great expansion.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Elias Pettersson has been nothing. He's been almost worse than Nick Ritchie, maybe not in terms of points, but like in terms of expectation,
Mhm.
he's not good. And I think, at least for the first little bit, Boudreau's going to do similar to what Keefe did, always comes back to the Leafs, get Barry a point or get Barry a goal. And now it's going to be like, get Pettersson a goal, get Pettersson going. Same thing with Besser. Now, Besser's in the last year of his bridge deal, so he's going to want to get going.
Now, is he an RFA or a UFA?
He's RFA.
Okay.
Which is just the bridge deal to get him this far, sort of thing. Get them going. Get Connor Garland going. He was a pickup last year. Pokolzin, Hoglander, those guys are up and coming, so we want to see what they can do.
Get OEL going.
Oh, and him
They
too.
need to get OEL
Yeah.
moving because he's on pace for 16 points this season.
Now he's
Oh,
more of an
ouch, really?
offensive defenseman.
Yes.
He is. Okay, so
So
he's
that's-
meant to be doing that.
He should be scoring about 50 points in a
Okay.
season.
Yep.
And
yeah,
being
yeah.
on pace for 16 is a bad look.
Now he's
right
the
now.
number 2 to Quinn Hughes, though. So that production should be down a little bit, maybe, but
Yeah, maybe, but he's getting a lot of power play time still.
true. Tyler Myers, Tucker Pullman, Luke Shen, Brad Hunt. I'd say those are kind of your defensive defensemen. So I think he's got a little bit to work with there. Tyler Myers is probably the only one he could maybe rely on. But yeah, get this offense going. Demko can hold you. He actually has a great goaltender to help him out too. So I think if he can get Pettersson going, it's going to be a nice trickle-down effect. And even tonight, it is Avalanche against Philly. And you're probably going to get to this anyway, but Philly is putting in some goals against the Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche are winning 5-3, but that might not be their fault. But fire under their butt. Alain Vigneault just got fired.
Yes, he
Philly
did.
they want it. So I think similarly, the Canucks tonight against the Kings, they're going to have some fire under their butt.
Might have to actually watch that game.
Yeah. Now, Vancouver is still in the hunt for a new GM. Do you think they're going to go with a known commodity, someone who maybe is just not working right now, who is a known GM? Or do you think they're going to go for someone maybe a little bit younger, maybe someone from a minor team? As the theory kind of goes, the Aquilinis are driving this car and that they want somebody who's going to do the moves that they want. What do you think, Dan? Do you think they're going to go with someone with a little more experience or someone that's going to be, a fresher face in the league at this point?
Well, I mean, if they're going for somebody the yes man, quote unquote, then you're definitely going to go with the experienced people. I wouldn't think a younger would come in and, the youth these days are so opinionated that you can't trust them to come in and not change things up. So
All
I
good
think
things,
they're-
Dan. All
Are
good
you
things.
talking about your son putting up a tree again? He's so opinionated.
That's right. Yeah. So, God, I want to do the top, Daddy. No, you're 2.5. Sorry, you're on the floor.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I would definitely go with an experience if you're looking for somebody that you can kind of push around and have do what you want. Look for somebody at the end of their career and go with someone like that.
I'm actually going to say the opposite there, Dan. Dan and I are at odds tonight, I guess.
Fairly.
Why I oughta?
I think the Aquilinis think they can push around a young guy. If they bring in someone, let's say like Bergevin, which I don't think will actually happen, Bergevin will be like, no, I'm going to do what I do. You do the money stuff, and I'm going to build your team because it's shit. I think if they brought in somebody new and fresh, being like, okay, well, I'm just here to get started, going to get my foot in the door, and they'll be like, you do this, 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 and this. Okay, great, thank you. So maybe somebody a little less known might be better for them. I don't know who.
Now, there's a pretty big pool anywhere, maybe out of the Canadian Hockey League, maybe someone out of the, that has a little experience in a front office in the the NCAA, something like that. There's a lot of names out there that give a guy a first shot in the league. Now, with all these spots that are open, is this the time for a team to take that step forward and actually hire a woman for a front office?
Oh, I would love it.
Now, but I do think it is time for the NHL to take that step forward. Now, I know a few teams have hired, some women in their front offices. I know some teams have female scouts, but I think it is time to move forward. There's a lot of really smart names in this, one name that comes to mind. Now, I'd hate to lose her as the Leafs, but Haley Wickenheiser is currently running player development in Toronto.
Mhm.
And this might be the time for a team to take a shot and hire a smart person like Haley Wickenheiser as a general manager in this league.
Has she ever mentioned wanting to do something like that?
I'm not necessarily saying her for sure, but there are a lot of smart minds that are not being utilized in this league at this point.
Well, baseball, I think it was 2 years ago, just had their first female GM for the Miami Marlins, and the rebuild's going quite well, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not? If women cannot play against men in the league because of reasons,
Whatever reasons.
fine. I don't think there's any reason to hold them back from GMing. There's no physical reason at all.
And as we've learned, being a NHL GM is you have to be one of the dumbest people in the universe to be part of this job. So
Yeah.
maybe if we hire a woman, they obviously more rational than we are. So maybe they'll be the one that just runs away with the league.
If you're following Jim Benning, you really can't mess this up. So I think this is a good opportunity.
I've got a
for
2.5-month-old daughter. She could probably do a better job just randomly
Wouldn't
poking
doubt it.
things.
Wouldn't doubt it. Here, point at the player you do want. Never mind. Put down the phone. Put down the phone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have your food.
It's definitely time, though. I mean, if you look at our women's hockey teams nationally and internationally, like when we see the Olympics and we see the nationals, or the junior star, they are fantastic.
Mhm.
Like they are excellent players and they are well managed. So it's definitely time to try mixing something up. I think the OHL, I remember they just had their first female ref a few months, maybe a month ago.
The AHL does as well now.
Mhm.
So the OHL
the
and
AHL
the
does
AHL
as well.
both do.
So we're moving that way anyway. This is, if, as Kyle said, if there can't be equality on the ice, let's have it off the ice. So I think that's the way to go for sure.
Very well said.
And for Vancouver, I mean, try anything. It's like Montreal. Try anything to win.
Do we want to talk about Philadelphia and their coaching situation?
Just that Vigneault got fired and Mike Yeo is now in.
Okay, he's the new interim.
Yep, he hasn't been a head coach since the Blues, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah.
And that was just before they won. So Mike Yeo
Yeah,
was
they
in
fired him
as
right
they
before-
went.
Yeah.
As they went down, and then Berube got hired, and they went up and they won. So that's weird. Also, fun fact: Mike Yeo has a cottage or is from Sturgeon Falls, which is where my wife is from.
Oh, okay.
So when he did win the Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh, because I think he was a assistant then, he had his day with the cup up there. So she got to see the cup. And
Oh, very
see
nice.
that. So I thought
That's pretty cool.
little side note. I think Yeo will do a good job. I think he did a good job with Minnesota when he had a time. I think he did an okay job with St. Louis when he had a time. But one thing I did really, really like about, something that the Dangle podcast said was they need an identity in Philly again.
Day number 1. You know what the Philadelphia Flyers need to do? Go out there and punch somebody and be the Philadelphia Flyers.
Well, it is day 1. I haven't seen many penalties or anything come up. Against Colorado, that'd be a really, really good idea. Maybe Carter Hart needs to channel his inner Hextall or something. But it needs that identity. Now, again, as I think about it, Mike Yeo might not be the guy to give them that identity. Now, he'll be fine for a while, but I think that's what they need first. And it might need to be bruising, or it might need to be hardcore offense or a better defense. I don't know. It needs to be something because right now it's just kind of middling.
Okay, now can we talk about the Leafs? Okay, so the Leafs had 3 games this week. First started off coming back home after the California road trip against the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche were one of the hottest teams going into this game, along with the Leafs. They were 2 of the hottest teams in the league. And unfortunately, not long before the game started, Darcy Kemper got an injury, and their backup, the third goalie, actually Francouz, was injured as well.
He's been injured for over a year now, so he's not really.
Okay, well, he's been in the depth chart. He's their third goalie.
Yeah, Jonas Johansson.
Thank you. So he was in the net, and the Leafs took full advantage of this situation, winning the game 8-3. It was a bit of a shooting fest. Now, what did you guys think of that game? I know that the thought was from Sheldon Keefe that the team did not look as good as what the score said.
Don't get me started on Sheldon Keefe, man.
What do you think of the game? Dan, I'll let you start.
I'm going to side probably with Kyle here, and I think the Leafs look great. I mean, to get The hat trick for Matthews, like that was the beautiful goal straight in front of the net where he just kind of stood in front of Johansson dangling for a second and then like, oh, right over your shoulder. Like they look great. I think they even had a power play goal or two in that game.
None, actually.
No,
No,
not in that
no.
one. It was in Minnesota. Okay, that was Campbell in net before we went back to Wall. He looked fantastic. He let in a few more goals than I'd hoped, given our bet and also given the Leafs stats. Tavares had a good night. Nylander was getting goals. Like everybody was scoring and everybody was showing up. The offense, maybe that's a good point. Maybe the offense was good with goals, but that's because of the goaltending.
Now, you mentioned the Austin Matthews goal, that beautiful forehand to backhand, forehand in front of the net and right up over the shoulder. Now, he had enough time to go forehand to backhand, back to forehand, and go over the shoulder. Now, this is Austin Matthews. He had about 25 feet in every direction around him.
Yeah, you don't leave somebody like him
at the end of the game, when it's, Leafs already had 7 goals, Pierre Engvall scored from the top of the circle, just on a rush.
Yeah.
So, not to say that the Leafs didn't play well. Did the Leafs play as well as what the score indicated of 8-3? Was it an 8-3 game? Or was it, a 4-3 game where 4 goals that went in that probably shouldn't have? What do you think about that?
I wouldn't say 4-3. I'd say more like 5, maybe 6-3.
Okay.
Whereas I think 2
definitely.
of them were a little extra, and one of them being Matthews' third goal. And I think Colorado did give up a little bit. They had a bit of a rush at the end with Kadri's power play goal, which really sucked for my fantasy, but whatever. But I really do think they dominated, and they took advantage of their crappy goalie situation, which sucks for Colorado, and I did kind of want to see a battle like we did with Minnesota, but I don't know, you snooze, you lose. Oh, we forgot to mention the e-bug. We had another potential e-bug that game, too.
Yes, and was
I
anyone
was
else
hoping.
Was anyone else
I was
pooping their
so
pants when you
praying
saw
that was
that the
gonna
e-bug
happen.
was in the building?
I didn't want to put that energy into the world.
That energy is always in the world.
Once it's 4-3, or once it's like you've got 5 goals scored on Johansson, why not bring in I can't remember the guy's name, but he was University of Toronto, I think.
I don't think they wanted to
Jet
injure him.
Alexander was the
Right,
name.
right.
You can't forget a name like Jet Alexander.
Jet Alexander, yeah.
That's a fantastic name.
Is
It sounds like a private private plane company or something. Fly, Jet Alexander. If you fly with us, you're there already.
Like give him a little bit of practice against these high caliber players. One goal that I loved was the Tavares goal where he did the kind of double bang in the net, got his own rebound and put it in. That against an e-bug is probably going to go in every time as well as Johansson.
We say that,
but
yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, you always.
What's
get
our experience
people
with this,
standing on
though?
their head. Sometimes, equipment managers also lace up the skates and do really well. But
I've never heard of this story. Should we elaborate on this one?
No. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah.
But it was a bad. I think rather than being a good night for Toronto, it was a bad night for Colorado.
Okay, I can go with that.
Just like the last 2 nights.
No.
Okay. So we'll talk. Well, do you guys want to move? We can move on to game number 2 against Minnesota.
Yeah, we can move on. Yep.
So after having the one game at home after the California road trip, Leafs go back on the road to Minnesota to play the Wild. They pretty quickly go down 3-0 before they claw their way back to a 3-3 tie, take it to overtime, and then finally they lose, unfortunately, in the shootout. What do you think about the Leafs going down that early and having to claw their way back? Do we see a team that is starting to see that they can win these games and that they're going to be more playoff ready, or do you see a team that was not ready to play?
Final answer.
Yeah.
Playoff team ready to bounce
Yes.
back?
Ready to bounce back. Absolutely. They went down and it was first period 3-0. It was second period. Timeout. Spezza goes. And that's all they needed. They needed a spark from their best player, Jason Spezza. And it just felt so good to come back. It was great in one period, too. Like, the third period had nothing
It was quick,
in it.
yeah.
And it was awesome hockey. It was 2 of the hottest teams going at. Now, we said Colorado was a hot team, too. Like, yes, but Minnesota is leading that division.
Mm-hmm.
And I, not so much I had faith, but I saw that they were fighting. So it's like, yes, they can do this. They just need to get it in the net. Talbot was doing really, really well. I think Talbot outplayed Campbell in that game, at least until the third period where the Leafs were really hammering. And I have more faith in the Leafs now, even after the drubbing by Winnipeg. I have more faith in the Leafs now because they came back against a really solid team.
I kind of agree with Kyle. I mean, I'm happy that they were able to come back from a 3-0 victory and not just turtle like we've seen them do so many times. I mean, you nailed it, Kyle. Like, Spezza had a lot to do with it. He scored 2 goals, and he was certainly a leader on the ice. He scored 2 beautiful goals. That helps. But in a playoff game, you need to come back, and then you need to progress further before the end of the period, the third period. So we need to work. Well, I would think they need to work a little bit on the follow through. I know they scored 3 goals in 1 period, and that's great, but they let it go to a shootout, and we haven't seen a shootout yet this year, if I'm right.
That was the first one, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean they've dominated in overtime really nicely. It kind of made it, I'm not worried about playoffs, but to have full confidence in the Leafs, like I've said before, offense I'm feeling good about, defense, goaltending I'm feeling good about that. That little bit extra would have been nice to see, to be able to solidify that kind of comeback.
So 2 out of 3 periods is what you're saying. Actually, no, it was only like 1 out of 3, really.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of missed the first period of the game, showed up for the second, and then the third period was good hockey.
I think the third was
a ton of shots.
They were in there. I think they were in the third.
It was pretty back and forth in the third.
That was really, really great hockey. And Talbot shut him down. Campbell held the fort. So I would say it was 2 out of 3 periods. The first period was the one that was missed, not the third.
So
yeah, that's fair.
And then in the overtime, we had what for some reason turns to be a controversial call on the slash on Jason Spezza. I know that Dean Evanson, the coach of the Minnesota Wild, didn't seem to like the call at the time. He was, calling it a diving call, and he's kind of smiling and shaking his head smugly. I think at that time, yes, it looked delayed, but Jason Spezza is a guy with 1,200 points games in this league. He deserves the respect of, the benefit of the doubt from the coaches and the referees.
The first 3 replays of that slash, I didn't agree that it was a penalty. So
it was a pretty hard slash on the hands there.
It was, but I had to see the right angle to actually
Fair
say,
enough.
oh, okay, that's actually a penalty.
It was a funny angle.
But that was beautiful. But, to be a ref on the ice, you have a split second to make the decision. You may not be at the best angle that the camera showed. And I can see how it was called. I agree with it now, having seen all of the footage and, watching the replays in the game. But I was kind of thinking, I don't blame, I would never say Spezza's a diver because he has more integrity than that. But I thought that maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked.
He's building up the refs before we tear them down.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, yes.
Guys, they're people too.
Okay, so let's move on to the next game in Winnipeg. Now, this is a back-to-back game.
Was that a game?
We're going to move on to the next couple hours of the evening in Winnipeg. It was a back-to-back, with travel. Now, the Leafs played in 3 cities in 5 nights. And I've heard a lot of this term thrown around a lot this season with this condensed schedule, with a lot of travel. A lot of people are looking at games that are considered a scheduled loss. Now, this is a game where you're coming in late, you're going to a different time zone, you've recently played, maybe playing against a team that is rested. Now, Leafs at the end of 1, it's 1-1, and then at the beginning of the second, turns into a shooting gallery against Joseph Woll. Now, it seemed the Leafs gave up endless numbers of 2-on-1 chances before they came back 5-3 by the end of the second, and things started to, get a little dicey in the third. What did you guys think about the Leafs play in that game? Let's just talk about the Leafs at this point. What did you see in that one?
So this is where I'll probably divert. I didn't like the Leafs play. I mean, they let in some. Okay, so Woll was in net. I had really high hopes for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he did terribly, but I think there were a lot of soft. Okay, well, that's fair. I don't think he had some really good saves near the end of the game.
Yeah,
but he let in some really big softies that really shouldn't have been goals.
Yeah.
I think he had one just kind of between his shoulder and his leg or his arm and his leg that he should have gotten. Can't remember who scored it, but it was a soft one, and I was disappointed to see that go in. But I think the Leafs they may have been tired. It's a back-to-back, but the defense seemed a little slow. They didn't seem like they were hitting and making those rushes back to the net to do the blocks. Muzzin seemed. I don't want to pick on Muzzin because I do like him as a player.
I do.
But okay, fair enough. But he just didn't have his best game in that game, and I think that also contributed.
Well, they shaked up the lines, right?
Yeah, that's true, and that could be part of it. That's a good point.
So it was Riley Brody, Muzzin, Liljegren, which I've been saying I want
You've
to
been saying this for a while. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's see what Liljegren can do with someone other than his bro, Sandin. And then it was Sandin Hall, which I thought was interesting. And I wouldn't call it necessarily a demotion for Hall, but Muzzin Hall has just not been clicking.
They're too slow.
Yeah, and they were so good last year. They were definitely our top unit when Riley was not so good.
Mm-hmm.
So
until Sandin's carried off the ice, which was unfortunate.
That is, we haven't had an update on that yet, but I am
No.
excited for that.
I think it was just a bit of a breakdown.
Now, Neil Pionk did get 2-game suspension. They come down today for that kneeing hit on Sandin. So the league has deemed it as, a punishable offense for what he did in that play. We'll just say that. Now, I know there's been a lot of people talking that Justin Hall did not have the best week. Do we want to see him stay in the lineup in this next week, or do we want to see Dermott come back in? I guess he's probably going to have to if Sandin's going to be out. Now, let's say Sandin is in. Yeah.
Not that I don't want Dermott back, but I wanted Hall to sit.
Now, we do have a little bit of cap space, or do we want to see someone else come up from the Marlies? Now, you were talking about Duzak, Kimi Halme. I know there was Menel that we've talked about in the past. Would you want to see Dermott slot back in or start a new rotation right now with one of these young guys? Dan, what do you think?
I'd go with a young guy. I think you're right, though, that we're going to see Dermott come up anyway to cover for Sandin. So we're probably going to, at one point, maybe even see a Dermott Hall line. I would probably switch to youth right now because Hall is not having his best games. Every time I see him, he's slow. He's not at the play on time. He's still pinching, even though he, kind of got benched for it, kind of.
Even though he isn't really an offensive guy. Even though his first goal in the league was an end-to-end rush with a breakaway to score.
Yeah, but those are 1 in a million.
Exactly.
Those don't happen all the time. You can't be chasing that every single time you get the puck.
What do you think, Kyle? Do you want to see one of the young guys, or do you want us to stick with the rotation we have?
Well, I just flip-flopped like twice in my head. Because I originally said no.
It's the life of a Leafs fan.
That seems like a bit of a slight at the depth of the 7. Because they've been rotating Liljegren, Dermott. They had Hall off for a bit, and I think they're just trying to reignite him before sitting him, maybe.
So is it time to sit him and bring someone else into the lineup?
Well, I was thinking that, but I don't want to slight them. Like, we have that depth so that if an injury happens, we still have 6. So that we have these good 6.
Don't want to burn a bridge in the middle of the season.
Exactly. But I did just look at the schedule. This week, 3 home games. Next week, they go out west again. Like, they were just there. They're going to go Edmonton, Calgary, Canucks, back-to-back with the Kraken, which I'm definitely going to watch because that's going to be super
That'll
cool.
be a good game.
Oh,
9 o'clock.
absolutely.
Darn.
9 o'clock?
It's a 9 o'clock game
That's
on
not bad.
a Sunday.
It's not 10:30.
That's true.
That's perfect for me.
Oh, I've already done teaching at that point. Never mind. I'm watching that game.
Yeah, plus it's a few weeks away. That's Christmas. Who cares?
That's very true. But that's a tough schedule. So I flip back. Yes. Let's bring in a young guy. Take a young guy on the road trip with us if we can.
Even just get him some practices on the road with these teams.
Practices, maybe 2 games. Maybe one of the back-to-backs. Maybe.
Even you can play them in Vancouver, Seattle. I know it is back-to-back.
Okay.
Play them back-to-back. Those are 2 teams that you can play your young guys against.
Yeah, and then you switch off who's sitting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say yes. I just don't know who. Maybe Duzak, but he's never played a game. Probably Menel. Get a look at him.
Okay, so of the 3 games, of all the Leafs players, Who would you say was the strongest player
Wait,
of the
we're
week?
not going to talk about the refs.
We'll get there.
Okay, we're getting there.
We're
Okay.
getting there. Don't
Never
get ahead.
mind. Sorry.
Don't get ahead of me now.
I was like, how did we skip over this? I am so ready for this. I've been thinking about this all day.
So who is your strongest player of the week? Who would you tip your hat as the best leave of the week? Dan.
So Matthews got a hat trick. That's an impressive feat. I think it was his 4th hat trick, career hat trick, which is, fantastic for him. But I'm going to give it to Spezza. He led the team back to the Minnesota game. He pushed hard in the Colorado game. I don't know if he got any assists in the Colorado. I should check that out. He got a goal, in the Colorado game as well. Well, that was...
Everybody got a goal in the
against
Colorado game.
Last night was tough, but he stood up for Sandin. There's a whole debate. Well, not a debate. I mean, he's been called in by player safety to have an in-person meeting.
Hold on to that. We're going to talk about that, though.
Okay. So, anyway, I'll leave it at he stood up for Sandin. He scored a bunch of goals. He led the team to almost a comeback win. I'm going to give it to Spezza.
I'm going to go Bunting, I think. Quite a few points this week, but I think he was the most noticeable out there. Supposedly, he's also leading in Calder points. He's still Calder eligible.
He's got more points than Raymond.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, maybe he's second.
You're right.
Second, I believe he might be second because I think Lucas Raymond is running away with the Calder at this point.
Which I hope happens. I hope it's not Bunting. Like, I love him and he's a great player, but he doesn't deserve the Calder.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think he was definitely the most noticeable. He's adding that grit. He looks more like Hyman, which was kind of who he was replacing a little bit. He's getting those dirty goals. He's starting to get a little bit more chemistry with Matthews. Some of the plays they're making is really, really effective. So I'm going to give it to Bunting.
Okay, so of the players this week, who would you say was the most underperforming Leaf in your mind? Who would you say was your weakest of the week?
Oh, man, I hate to rag on the guy, but I'm going to say Richie.
Oh, interesting.
I'm going to say Richie. He had an assist in each game, and that's fantastic. But that's not why we were excited for him at the start of the season. I mean, this guy was supposed to be kind of like the shutdown forward. He's going to score some goals. He's going to get in front of the net and make it happen. I'm just not seeing that from him. He did have some interesting attempts in the last 3 games, but, he's got to friggin' convert on these things. So even though I don't we talked a little bit about Hall and how I think he probably needs to sit as well, but I still think I got to go with Richie on this.
I'm really surprised about that because I thought this was his best week. He's contributing in different ways, and he's actually finding his spot in front of that net, and he's not as noticeable as this big blob that's doing crap. But I still get it. The one I'm noticing the most, other than Justin Hall, is Jake Muzzin. And I love Muzzin, but he just seems to be making stupid mistakes out there. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not you. Why are you not you? Please be you right now. So Muzzin is the most confusing, and I thought the weakest player of the week.
Yeah, Muzzin doesn't seem to have the same patience he had in the past.
Yes.
He seems to be running, trying to rush the plays a little bit more than he has in past years.
Mm-hmm.
He was better last year. It's disappointing, but
yeah, I don't have the same confidence when they throw out Muzzin with whoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
Muzzin did go down in the playoffs with an injury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And do you remember do we have any idea what the injury was?
It was a leg
Was it
oriented,
leg
lower
injury?
body.
So that could be contributing to his slowdown, and he might still be, doing, because if he was injured enough to not play in the last couple games of that series, it was probably a pretty serious injury.
Yeah.
Sorry, if he's injured enough that his game is slowing down, that's up to Kiefer Dubas to pull the trigger and move him, right? Like
That's what LTIR is for.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good
And
point.
with these young guys that we can bring up, so maybe we can move Sandin up to the second pairing and slot in someone like Duzak on the third pair with, let's say with Dermott or whatever. There's enough guys that we can still do a 7-man rotation even with him on the LTIR.
Especially with so many points right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not that I want to give up points, but the regular season doesn't matter. Let's get these guys healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah,
And seeing that there's at least Buffalo, Montreal, and Ottawa at the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
There's 3 of the 4 places that are going to miss the playoffs that are your shoe-in. So the Leafs can take it a little bit easier
I think so.
and just to be able to slide into the playoffs.
I don't think it was their worst week. I think the start of the season, mid kind of like 2 weeks into the start of the season, they had their worst week. So
I
at
think
least
we were
we're not seeing
expecting
the start
this.
of the decline.
Coming out of the California road trip, I think we were kind of expecting them to have a few games like this. I was thinking it was going to be the Colorado game.
I think everybody did.
Yeah. They started to backslide a little bit when they went back on the road.
It'll be interesting to see if they can respond against Columbus and then the Lightning.
Yes.
The Lightning's going to be a big test.
Yep.
So we're going to have the talk. And we've alluded to it a few times throughout the podcast at this point of some questionable, debatable situations involving refereeing in the last few games. Now, the first one I'll bring up is in the Minnesota game. Marcus Foligno in the third period, or maybe it was even in overtime, crashed the net and went right through Jack Campbell, hit his head. Luckily, Jack Campbell was fine. Now, in true Jack Campbell fashion, after the game when asked about it, he said, you know what? Sometimes I like a little bit of, rough and tumble play at the net. I really like it, which is just the most Jack Campbell thing. What I had said, I thought he was going to say was, oh yeah, he really did a good job. He really tried to bean me on that one. Like I can really commend him. He really went all for it.
Really tried to take my head off there.
So there was no call in that play, which makes us wonder what is goaltender interference. In the Winnipeg game, the first two periods weren't too bad, and then everything fell apart in the third.
Yeah.
So
Dumpster fire.
there was the Dubois ragdolling Austin Matthews on his back, trying to slam him into the ice.
Yep.
And somehow Matthews also gets a penalty on this call. Now,
Stupid.
the thing that they say for refs is that the game has gone so fast. There's no way the refs didn't see that. He was standing so close, he almost got smacked in the face with a stick.
Yeah, he grabbed the stick.
He's literally within 6 feet of this happening and still somehow manages to screw up the call.
Yeah.
Now, later in the game, there was, as we mentioned, the knee-on-knee with Pionk and Sandin. Now, Sandin did need to leave the game. Pionk since then has gotten 2-game suspension, but there was no call at the time. Because of that, Jason Spezza decided to take it into his own hand and go after Pionk with a hit. Now, unfortunately, as Spezza's coming in for a hit, Pionk starts to fall. Now, looking at it in a slow motion, it looks like a terrible play. A lot of people online were making the call, comparing it to what happened with Tavares and Perry last year. They're saying, you look and see what happens when a player's in a vulnerable spot like that. Looks what can happen. If you look at it in real speed, it's one misses it from the time that he starts to fall to the time that Spezza hits him. There's no time to get out of the way of that. Now, Spezza is going to have an in-person hearing, I guess a Zoom meeting, in person, whatever, with the league, which means he could get up to 5 games.
6 games.
More than 5 games is what.
Yeah. 6-game minimum.
So another thing that I saw was that these were the same referees that played in game number 2 in 2019 against the Boston Bruins.
Darn, I was hoping I was going to be able to drop that in the middle of your
Sorry.
thing. I already knew it. Darn, I couldn't believe it.
These are refs that have a history with the Toronto Maple Leafs of letting games get away. Now, there has been a large call from a lot of the NHL fan base saying that refs need to be accountable. Do you think that's going to be enough for them to change it, or is there something else that the league needs to do to fix this perpetual refereeing officiating problem that we see every year? We've only been at this podcast for 2 years, but we've probably talked about this a dozen times to this point.
Well, my question is, how do you hold them accountable?
So with the NBA, at the end of every game, the refs need to write a report as to what happened with the game, why they made certain calls, why they made There's a thing about game management and there's a thing about managing the game.
Okay.
So you can have game management to make sure that the game is in control. Managing the game is calling it your way. Now, so they have to prove what they're doing, and then they are also available to the media to answer questions at the end of the game in the NHL. In the NBA. So if there is a questionable call, someone can ask about it, and they can actually get the ref's opinion on why did they make that call. Do you think that would be enough?
Yes, but I don't think it'll happen, which is the worst. I think the only option that refs might go for is an eye in the sky to make up their calls on the fly, as opposed to having to justify them after the fact.
So there are calls that get missed because it is a fast game. That's where you're going to want that eye in the sky. Now, calls like the Austin Matthews and Dubois so-called fight, that's not necessarily an eye in the sky thing.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that media should be able to ask, why did you call Austin Matthews a penalty on that?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think with Bettman at the helm, we're going to see any major change in refs. I think that the way that the reffing is done right now is it's kind of like the traditional way that it's always been done. And if you think about it and this is me putting on my like capitalism hat, if you're Gary Bettman and you want everyone to keep talking hockey, you want the most controversial shit out there that you can have. And you want the teams that are doing really well to have really shitty calls against them. So, we talked about scheduled loss. Maybe this is kind of one of them.
Now, the NHL, I don't know if this is even debatable, they have a very hard time drawing in new fans. So what the NHL does is they rely a lot on hardcore fans like us. Now, what they're doing with this kind of product, to do things like this, is that they're alienating hardcore fans because the random fans aren't going to give a shit about, a Sunday night game with Toronto and Winnipeg because most of your market's going to be down in the States. They don't care about games like this. So for them to let a game get away like this isn't really going to be a big draw. All it is doing is alienating hardcore fans.
Yeah. Do you think it would change anything if they were held accountable?
In the short term, no. In the long term, yes.
Okay.
I think that refs knowing night in, night out that they're going to have to answer for this, as long as the media will stay hard on them and ask the hard questions at the end of the game, that they might be able to get some sort of change. Now, Dan, I completely agree. As long as Gary Bettman is in charge with this league, I don't think we're going to see this change. Now, what is Gary Bettman there for? He's there to make the owners happy.
Yes.
And who do the owners listen to?
The fans.
They listen to money.
Sorry, money.
Yeah.
I
was going to say, really?
Which comes from the fans. They don't actually listen to the fans until there is a drop in revenue.
Yeah, but
now look at the Vancouver Canucks.
There's fans on Twitter and there's fans at the game.
But it doesn't matter with this kind of thing. Everybody is unhappy with it.
Okay.
Fans in the game are going to be unhappy with that as well.
I guess.
Now, I think the only way that we're going to be able to see some sort of change if people continue to talk about this, like we are, like the other podcasts, the Steve Dangle podcast is, they're pushing this. A lot of people are pushing for this kind of thing very hard. If we can keep talking about this and keep getting it out there, making the league know that fans are unhappy about this and prove it in the wallet books. Attendance is already down. Stop going, let's not go to as many games. Let's not buy the jerseys. And tell them this is why we're doing this. Saying that we are boycotting you until you fix the product that is on the ice and fix this game that we love. We spend hours every week talking about this, and it feels like the NHL is actively destroying hockey with little things like this. With the refereeing, with things like the cover-ups, with the fight against brain injuries. It seems like Gary Bettman is one thing after another systematically just ruining the league. And I think we need to actually go forward at this point and make it known to the owners that we need change.
Okay, I have a question for you, Craig.
Yeah.
You're frustrated with the current status of the NHL.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Leafs release a new jersey next year, and you really like Marner or Matthews. Are you going to buy that jersey?
This is what I'm saying. That is when we say, no, we'll buy this jersey when you fix the game.
See,
show them
I
in
don't
their
think enough
pocketbooks.
people are worried about it to not buy that jersey.
And I don't think enough people see that is the way to fix it. They see Gary Bettman as a guy that is employed by the league. He's employed by the owners, and the owners only listen to their checkbooks.
Okay. My follow-up question is, we scrap Gary Bettman somehow, and Haley Wickenheiser takes control. Do things change monumentally?
I think there is an emotional intelligence that immediately is injected into the
fair enough.
Into the owners of this league.
But does the dollar still control things?
Sure.
On the grand scale of the NHL?
Look at the growth of the NBA over the last decade, with having a commissioner that is forward-thinking, that actually wants to grow the media, grow the fandom, show off the stars of the game. Like there's a lot of even in the NFL, there's a new rule recently saying that you can't tackle the. I'm not a big football person.
Overly tackle.
You can't
sort of
overly
thing.
tackle the quarterback because the quarterback is the star of the game.
The driver of the
They are the
offense, yeah.
driver of everything that's happening. And by being able to protect those guys, they're actually creating more exciting play, more scoring. So here's another fact talking about the refereeing. Austin Matthews has not drawn a penalty at 5-on-5 yet this season.
Wait, really?
Austin Matthews, let me repeat that, has not drawn a single penalty at 5-on-5 in 24 games now that they played.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Does anyone
kind of
else think
crazy.
that's ridiculous?
Actually.
He would have
Or is
drawn
it
one
he's
last
not
night.
producing enough and they're not as worried?
He scored 15 goals.
Well, maybe he
He's
holds his
Austin
own, though, because
Matthews.
he's a big dude. Somebody
Yeah.
trips him, but he doesn't actually fall down.
But look at last night. He should have drawn a penalty.
Yeah.
And immediately they just take away. Of course, if you're Winnipeg, are you going to take Austin Matthews off the ice? Sure. He is one of the best power play guys in the league.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you're going to want to take him off the ice as well. And by them calling a penalty on something like that, and Keefe even said this in the post game, you're taking away a power play in a 5-3 game, and it could be a 1-goal game after that. Instead, you're taking one of the best players off the ice
Mm-hmm.
for 2 minutes.
So I think what the league is doing is they're pandering to the wrong audience.
They're
not
pandering
us.
to the lowest common denominator by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and to a much older audience. I would say if these were political parties, the NHL is right wing right now.
I don't think we need to
I know.
say that. I think we know this,
but, like,
unfortunately.
But the NBA has gone the other direction.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's so interesting that there's lots of questions we have for the left a lot, but they try stuff. And the NBA has tried things and it's led
worked.
to success. Whereas the NHL is only looking backwards to when hockey was rough and tumble and everyone was super intense. And it's like, oh my God, we had so many fans, or at least a raucous of fans. And now the loudest fans aren't quite as loud, so they think they're not having as much success. I think you're 100% correct, but I do not trust these people to actually follow through with that.
And to make the right decisions.
And then on top of what Dan says, I do not trust the fans, or at least the loudest fans, to actually use their wallets to cause change. Because
So you're talking about the older people who have money to be able to spend on this kind of stuff.
the money. You're
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
But we also have to consider the overarching pandemic that's happened in the last 2 years now, almost. Oh God. And that's taken people out of the stands as well. There's less of a desire to go see a game in person than there has been before. I would have jumped at a Leafs Ottawa game in March last year for whatever price it is now. I'm not even looking right now.
People are starting to see that life is short. Maybe they don't want to waste their time cheering for a team when they know night in and night out, you just are going to be pissed off about what you see on the ice. If we're going to be watching this game in, game out, refereeing just being, blatantly doing whatever the hell they want, eventually people are just going to walk away. They're going to realize people have realized over the last 2 years that, time is short, and go and spend that time with some family instead of sitting down and just being angry in front of a hockey game.
I would love to see someone throw a ref's jersey on the ice.
Oh, that would be
the
fantastic.
best. We've
Okay.
seen Leafs jerseys, we've seen Habs jerseys, and we've seen Vancouver jerseys. I would love to see a Leafs jersey. Or sorry, not a Leafs, a ref's jersey thrown on the ice.
I think I know what we're doing when we go to the game in January.
That'd be nice. That'd be so
right.
good.
I'm sure we can walk down to the 100 section.
Yeah.
Somebody please throw this for me.
Just get a t-shirt cannon. Whoa, what was that?
Oh, and on top of that, Joseph Wall got clipped in the head last night as well. Also, no goaltender interference call.
No.
So,
nothing. Well, it was way outside the paint, and it was stupid, but
yeah, but they saw him coming out and he still went right on through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so for everybody who has gotten this far in the podcast, thank you for, sticking around with us and listening to us and being here with us. We want to thank you. It is the time of giving. It is December. We're coming up on Christmas, and we want to give you a Christmas present. So we are going to be doing a contest. We will be giving away 2 sets of tickets to the Ottawa Senators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So you'll get a chance to see one of the greatest players in the league come into the city with Sidney Crosby on New Year's Eve. Now, there's an afternoon game, New Year's Eve. It'll be a great time to take a friend out to an Ottawa Senators game and watch some quality hockey with Sidney Crosby and maybe see someone else get bit. We can always hope for someone to get bit. So we'll be putting up a post on Instagram. So there's three things. You need to follow us, you need to like the post, and you need to tag a friend, and you'll automatically be entered to win 2 tickets to the Ottawa Senators and Pittsburgh Penguins on December 31st. Sounds like fun, eh?
Sounds like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
fun. We'll keep it open until.
So we'll be doing the draw, I think, on Christmas Day.
That's a great idea.
So Merry Christmas to somebody who's going to be winning 2 tickets. Now we've got 2 sets of tickets, so we'll actually have 2 winners of 2. Make sure you go on Instagram, head over to LFHL Podcast on Instagram, follow us, like the post, and tag a friend that you would take into the game.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad to Austin Matthews. To Austin Matthews' lip. Merry Christmas.
I was going to say, yeah.
Okay, so congratulations to Kyle on winning the bet last week. With the big news of the giveaway, we're not going to do a bet this week, but we'll be back with the bet of the week next week. So head over to Instagram for the contest, but follow us anywhere. We're always posting on Facebook, Instagram, and we're also on YouTube. So if you want to listen to us on something other than your favorite podcast app, check us out on YouTube. And until next time, go Leafs go.
Go Leafs go.